If you are not using the Plans tab to organize your plans, you are missing out on a valuable tool in your Summit class where you can set clear guidelines and expectations for what students need to be accomplishing in your class every single day. It's really easy to set up your customized plans, and it really creates a student-friendly agenda view of what you're going to be doing in class each day, and you can put links to any resources they need, so it cuts down on time where you're hunting and searching and explaining where to find things. Every Summit project has a plans tab, so I pulled up one from my course last year, English 6, and I used the Exploring Poetry project, and I'm in the plans tab. Every plans tab has shared teacher plans to begin with. And what that is really just Summit gives you a rundown of what they think you should be doing every day in class. So it's kind of like pre-made plans for you. That's a great starting point. You can follow that. If it works for you, awesome. But sometimes, our classes get a little bit off track. We know we want to spend more time on this, less time on that. We want to rearrange things. So that's where the customization really comes into play. To do that, you're going to use this drop-down menu up here, and it will give you two options to creating My Plans. You can create My Plans from scratch or My Plans from shared teacher plans. If you create My Plans from scratch, it's going to give you a blank slate. Everything is going to be gone. And so you can just start, if you want full creative liberties, go for that. I suggest using My Plans from shared teacher plans. So it just creates a copy of the shared teacher plans that you can edit, and it doesn't mess with anybody else's plans if you have somebody who shares the course, and it doesn't revise the base curriculum at all. It's just for your version of the course you're teaching. So once you create My Plans, either way you want to do it, you will find them here, and you can click My Plans and it will pull up. Mine are already revised and edited. Yours would look plain if you created them from scratch, or they would look like a carbon copy of the shared teacher plans if you created them from the shared teacher plans. To start, if you scroll all the way down to the days, this is where you click Add and Organize. You can delete days if you need less days. You can scroll down and add days if you need more. You can also label them. So I choose to do a day of the week and the actual date. I found it was simpler for students to figure out. Also, when students are absent, it's an easy reference for them to see which plans they should be checking into, but really, it's at your discretion. From there, if you click into a day, you can also edit the title from here, and you can edit the goals for today. So if you want to put your own objectives in here, that is where you would do it. Otherwise, it's just going to pull from whatever final products or checkpoints that you add to your plans. It will automatically pull the cognitive skill objectives and put them up here for you. I like to use my plans as a whole group screencast at the very beginning of every block. So I would cast this to my TV and say, here's the plan for today, guys. We're going to spend 5 minutes just going over the nuts and bolts of this project. What is the project? Quick overview. Then we're going to do 30 minutes on an entry event. What is poetry to introduce your project? And 30 minutes on a poetry web scavenger hunt, and that would be our class. This is great for students who need some kind of visual representation. It really cuts down on questions, all those little things that take a lot of time out of your day when they add up. This kind of simplifies it. It's like one-stop shopping for everything that your kids need for your class period for that day. A couple of things I want to note is that by every activity, I'll call them, there you can put a time frame. So if you want to keep on pace or spend a certain amount of time on something, you can edit that in the edit tab. You can also, every activity will have a symbol by it. You can choose student led or teacher led, and that kind of tells your kids like, hey, you're going to be doing this on your own. I'm going to be leading you through this. You can also choose a collaboration option, which means they can work student led with partners. So another visual cue for your students who really are detail oriented and want to know all of those things right from the beginning. These buttons over here allow you to rearrange your agenda items. So I can move this down or move it back up. You can also add resources. So all of these things are clickable. These links are clickable, and they are resources that are added. And I'll show you in a second. Anything with a lock or a grayed out box means students don't see it on their view. So the student view is very clean. This is the teacher view. It has some notes that were transferred over from whatever this entry event was that Summit created. But students will not see it on their view. It's only on mine. Also, this would not be accessible by students. So again, just super clean, easy for them to read. And then I'll show you how to edit your activity. So edit, here you can edit the title of the activity. You can edit the number of minutes for the activity. You can even move the day. So if you don't get to something, you can bump it to the next day, or if you're running ahead of schedule, you can move things up. And you can only choose one checkpoint or final product per activity. I will show you a get around. Like if you want to put resources from multiple checkpoints or final products in, I'll show you how to do that. But you have to choose one, and then it only pulls up the resources given for that checkpoint or that final products that you can choose from. So I chose checkpoint 1, and it's the project nuts and bolts. That's what's going to attach to that activity. I want it to be teacher led, but again, you could choose student led. And then it's not collaborative. It's just going to be me lecturing for that 5 minutes. You would click save to make any changes. You could also delete an activity from here. If you want to add another resource attached to the same activity but from a different checkpoint or final product, you would just go to the plus button. I'm not going to create a new title for this because I want it to be linked to the same activity. Like visually, I want it to just be attached to that same 5-minute block. I don't need a description. I don't want it to have any extra minutes because again, I want it to be attached to that same 5-minute activity. At this time, I'm going to choose checkpoint 2, and I want to attach model final product. I want to choose the model because I want to show them what they're going to be creating. And then I'm not going to choose anything here because, I want it to be all connected to that first initial activity, the nuts and bolts, and I'll put create. And now you'll see there are 2 resources linked to this 5-minute overview of the project. If I want to get rid of something, I just click delete and it goes away. And creating your plans or your agenda for your students doesn't mean they have to click into every single link with you. For example, this 5-minute overview of the project nuts and bolts, I would screencast this. At this point, my students' computers would remain closed, and we're going to go over this whole group style, screencast it, and essentially it's linked there for any students who are absent, or if students need to go revisit that resource and have that information available to them later in the class period or while they're working on something else, they would still have access to it. But for me personally, I wouldn't want their computers open at this point. For the entry event, this is it's a what is poetry handout, and it's a slideshow. So this might be mix and match. Maybe I would cast this, but if there's anything interactive, then I might have my students following along. And then I would say, okay, guys, go to your plans, open up the what is poetry handout. Boom, it's there. They know where to find it, and that becomes routine. So I'm not always explaining how to find things. And then finally, the scavenger hunt is a independent student-led activity. So it's there for their access. And if at this point, if their computers weren't open yet, I would say, okay, everyone open their plans, find the launch web scavenger hunt, and we would go over it quickly, then they would get to work. The final thing to note is you have to click the shared with students box in order for your students to see your plans. If you don't click that, it will be hidden. The nice thing is that you can go and plan a couple of days in advance. I like to plan a week in advance. It's okay to get off track because you can share day by day. So even if I had created 5 days worth of plans, I would just share the day that we were working on. This keeps it as simple as possible and least overwhelming for the students. And then it gives you a lot of flexibility because you can adjust things as you're going along and not have to worry that, oh, students have already seen this or whatever. So, and that's it. Use the plans tab for setting clear guidelines and expectations for what your students should be completing in your class.